So just to get started, a little bit about me and my background. I am the co-founder of Houston Independent Authors. I am the co-coordinator for the Houston chapter of the Editorial Freelancers Association, and I'm also the creator of the Editing Science Fiction and Fantasy course in collaboration with the EFA. We have just finished our spring version of that, so it's been a lot of fun teaching other editors how to work in science fiction and fantasy and with self-published authors. So that's a big part of it. I'm also one of the founders of the Tomeworks Editing Collective, and I am the continuity editor for Cursed Dragon Ship Publishing. Oh, thank you, Rhonda. I'm glad to have you here. So this is a little bit of my background, but it means that I've spent a lot of time in indie circles and that I have absorbed a lot of information about what does and doesn't work for a successful launch. And one of the things that I do also assist with is providing authors with information about their genre and doing, viability reports for them if they're trying to work in a particular genre, and help them basically figure out if they are going to write a book, especially a write to market book, how much would they prospectively be able to make and what the size of that market is and things like that. There are a lot of tools that are out there, but if you are brand new or if you just simply don't have the time, basically people will farm out looking at those tools to me so that I can help them figure out what does and does not work. So that's a little bit about me, but let's talk about you. Now, a lot of you may have already had launches. You may have books out there. You may have no books out. You may have, something that you have published for free on a website, but not gone, to Kindle or to Kobo and try to, publish for money. So I don't expect you to know everything. And if you do have questions about a particular term that I'm using or about what I'm saying, please feel free to put it in the chat. I'm pretty much able to see your chat. And then if you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't quite get that. Can we go back? Just let me know, because the point of this is to help people, figure out what they want to do when they launch their book. And a lot of this is big and scary, especially if you're new, because there's so much information out there. A lot of it is conflicting. What works for somebody who's been, trying to publish wide for years may not work for you if you're a novice. And something that works in a particular genre may be totally inapplicable to you. So it is scary and it's confusing. And a lot of this will seem like a lot. But really, what it comes down to is just I want you to have information about this whole process so that you can make a determination for what works best for you. And make sure that all the things that are generally involved. So you can be like, I don't really want to do that. Or like, yeah, I'm down for all of this. And that'll help you decide, basically what your path going forward is and what, makes sense in your life, what you can put in there, basically. And then to have realistic expectations, because again, if you don't know what's going on and there's just this plethora of information and none of it makes sense, it can make us feel like we can't move. And we want to avoid that because we want to see your awesome books. We don't want them to get buried because, myself included, many of us just want to write the book and we don't want to have to deal with the marketing side of things. And unfortunately, that marketing side of things and the actual release, those are significant and making sure that people actually read what you write. And it sucks and it's sad and it's miserable for us introverts. But that is part of it's part of the package, unfortunately. So let's talk about it so we can figure out again what works for you, what does not. So to start with, let's talk about what a successful launch is, because what people feel like is important to them may be different, but there are three basically, excuse me, there are three things that generally speaking, people want to have available or to be able to do when they launch the book. The first one is they want readers to find their book, right? So a successful launch will increase social media presence. It'll allow for people to talk about your book, talk about your writing, share the information with others so that you're able to spread, the information that your book exists and how awesome it is to the widest possible swath of people very quickly. And one of the reasons why most people want to do it quickly is because if you're able to build momentum, then these like sales platforms like Amazon will do some of that marketing for you. Or, if you're showing up in a lot of posts on social media and people are engaging, then Facebook is more likely to show your stuff to other like-minded people and that kind of thing. So having a strong launch and getting a lot of like fervor for what's going on right now with your book launch is important for making those things happen. And most of us are also thinking of like, making sure that even after the launch that people are interested in finding the book. So part of the launch activities are going to include, making that connection with your book being awesome in ways that stick around on the internet. So it's making sure that people are blogging about your book or that people are reviewing your book so that if somebody else finds this information 6, 7 months down the road, they can see, oh yeah, I would probably like this, I'll buy it. And another thing that you might do is you may have influencers review the book so that, again, in a year, someone might be going through things on TikTok and find a review. Or you may have, somebody who is a professional reviewer have that information out there so that if somebody is just clicking around inside of that reviewer's website, they find information about your book and they're like, yeah, I will go through the process of finding this book and buying it because I've now known about, like I've found it, even if it's not, right when the launch happens. And lastly, for many people, the actual number of sales is quite important. And they measure success with income. So all of these things are important to varying degrees. And depending on what your goals are, you might have these in different orders of what's most important to you. But a successful launch is going to touch probably on all of them because they all kind of go hand in hand. So, what is the function of your street team when it comes to launching your book? Now, let's talk a little bit about what a street team is in a minute. But the most important thing your street team does is essentially cheerlead for you. They spread information about the book, either on social media, or they talk to people in person, or they go to local libraries and ask them to carry copies of your book to see if they can get the library, the librarians to add your book as something that people are going to want, into their list of things that they carry. Same thing with bookstores. They're going to engage with all of the stuff that you're putting online. And then, reposting the things that you do, liking the things where people are talking about you, even if they didn't create them. And essentially, they're increasing visibility on your behalf. And then, yeah, they help start the funnel of like-minded readers going to your website or going to the Amazon page or wherever you're selling the book and sharing it there. So that's a whole lot. And you may not demand that of, your street team. You may be like, I don't know if you really need to go to the library for this, but you need to decide like what you want them to do because they're going to be taking their information from you. They're going to decide what they do based upon you. Rhonda says she's the worst marketer because she has imposter syndrome. She's an introvert and she's got other day-to-day, issues that make this hard. And I'm not saying that you can't have all those things happen or be part of your process. What I would suggest doing when you are looking at these things as being insurmountable is try not to view those things where you're like, oh, I'm an imposter. Oh, I'm an introvert. Try not to look at those things as you-centric. If you can, think about you're doing this on behalf of the book, right? Like, I'm much more willing to do something for a friend than I am for myself. So in this case, I have to think of the manuscript, or in your case, I'm suggesting think of the manuscript as your buddy. Your buddy needs help here. Let's help your buddy, right? And possibly changing that mindset will make some of these activities easier and feel less onerous because it's not shedding light on you, right? It's letting other people know about your buddy and how awesome your buddy is. So Thank you. I hope that helps. But yeah, so we're basically, helping our book buddy out by getting these people to also help. And Ryan points out that if you know you have imposter syndrome, then how can you be sure you're actually bad at something? I wish that this paradox could help people. Unfortunately, a lot of people who have imposter syndrome aren't able to look at things in a rational way. A lot of imposter syndrome comes from fear or shame, which are, anxiety-based, processes that hit your fight or flight. And I definitely understand where you're coming from as far as like, well, wait, this doesn't make sense. But when somebody's, lizard brain kind of activities are set off, um, you're not thinking about it rationally. So I don't want to belittle anybody's well, not fight or flight. I don't want to belittle anybody's sense of imposter syndrome or make anybody move faster on their journey than they're ready to, because this is something that it needs to be overcome, but the way you overcome it is going to be different for everybody. Okay, so moving forward, like we're looking at the function of the street team and some of these things, if you are super uh already people know who you are, you may split these things up into multiple teams, right? You may not have one specific group do every single activity in there. And so for the bigger authors, they may split things up into smaller sections. And so some people will lump all of this together and some people will not. I would suggest trying to keep them separated if you have enough people who are ready to root for you, simply because it can be exhausting. And one of the great things about street teams is that most of the things that they are doing, this work they're doing for you, they're doing it for free. And it's really easy to overwhelm a volunteer workforce. And it's also easy for them to be like, oh, sure, yeah, I'll do it, and then not actually get around to doing it. And if you're asking, a one particular person to do 17 billion different things, the likelihood that they're going to end up slacking off, um, then the more likely that's going to like start a domino effect and they're not going to be useful, be like overall. And we don't want to go into, the resentment that can form when they feel like they've been put out and you feel like you've been put out. And it's just simply the situation wasn't optimal. So let's talk about what these different things are. So you have alpha readers and beta readers. Alpha readers are people who read your book in its earliest format. This might be your critique group. It might be a bestie. It's somebody who you trust to, or people you trust to look at your first draft or your zero draft and say, what absolutely is not working for this? What absolutely, even in its rawest form, is amazing and that I need to keep? Tell me creatively, where I'm going in the right direction and where I'm not. So your alpha reader sees like, this very, very early draft. And in all honesty, if you are going to get an editor because you can't find alpha readers to do this, this is a great place to do your developmental editing. Now, once you're pretty satisfied with your book, when you're like, no, I think I am ready. I have, I've written this book, I've revised it, the amount of times that I think is necessary, and I'm basically ready to launch this book, then you would get beta readers in. And beta readers give you their feedback as an actual reader. And it's, oh, I really like this. No, I really liked that. Um, excuse me. This didn't work for me. I felt like you went down tangents too much over here. And they're basically just telling you, how to clean up the little things that maybe put the reader off or like pop them out of the story, but you're not expecting to change a bunch of stuff. You're not expecting them, and they may surprise you and come back with some legitimate problems. But your goal is to say, is this truly ready for publishing? And hopefully they go, yeah, or they're like, yeah, except for these two or three things. And then you deal with that, right? Your ARC team is a little bit different. ARC stands for Advanced Reader Copy. And this means that you have sent actual books or you've sent electronic forms of the manuscript to a specific group of people so that they are ready when your book launches. As soon as it's, available for actual purchase, they're going to go in and put reviews in so that you have a lot of reviews that make your book look legitimate, right? Because when we go to Amazon, or we even go into Goodreads and we see that a book has two reviews, and both of those reviews are from people who have the same last name as the writer, and they gush about how awesome the book is, but don't actually give specifics. Like, wow, this was so fun. I would read this a million times. And the author is a cutie patootie. Like, you don't trust that review. As much as we love it when grandma likes what we do, if grandma is like one out of two reviews, on the buying or the purchasing platform, it doesn't it doesn't convey to your reader that this is legitimate review. And it's honestly not. So an art team is people that you trust to give you, useful reviews. Even if the person in the art team doesn't love the book 100% and it was going to give you a 4 star out of 5, and they delineate why they didn't give you that 5 stars, that's a really useful review because it tells people like, oh, I thought this book was going to have just some dragon, but I didn't realize this book was about only dragons. And that was just a little bit too much dragon for me. Then that review tells people who love dragons that, yeah, that didn't work for that person, but that absolutely is something that I'm interested in. So having actual detailed information in the reviews, you send that to your art team, because you want them to give you functional and useful reviews early. They may also be part of your street team, but most of the time, the art team is not the same thing as your street team. Launch team and street team are often used interchangeably, but most of the time that I've seen launch teams delineated or distinguished from street team is because the launch team will include people who are actually part of the ARC readership, or they're going to be doing other things that you wouldn't necessarily expect, like performing activities like a PA would, or there are other authors who are letting you use their platforms to do things, or it's publishers that have already published your work in other places, or people who have been inside of circles that you've been because you were in anthologies together. But basically, like the launch team is just everybody. And these are not things that are like necessarily dictionary terms. You will hear launch team and street team used independently. Excuse me, used as the same thing in most cases. So what you call a street team or what you call a launch team probably doesn't matter, because again, the goal of this is to put people in there that will help you. And nobody's asked this yet, but what's a good size for a street team? And the answer is it depends on you, and it depends on your book, and it depends on where you are inside of your career. So if I was a brand new author and I had not published anything, then I'm actually going to move forward just a little bit so we can talk about that first. If I'm a brand new author, and I have not published anything, and I don't really have any sort of like platform, I would not expect to have 500 people being on my street team or on my launch team. Whereas a number one bestseller may legitimately have, in the hundreds for people to help them out. And this can be really frustrating because even if you do get 100 people, to read your book ahead of time and promise to review, generally speaking, what I'm seeing is about 20%, across the board, about 20% of the people who you send like an advanced reader copy to will actually respond with a good review. And there are ways to make that better. And to get, to find people and cull out the ones that, aren't functional or helpful or useful, or who just want the copy to read it, but don't do anything on your behalf. But generally speaking, you kind of expect 20% of the people who sign up to help you to actually help you. So that means that if you get 20 people to say, yes, I am going to help you with this launch, and that's a realistic expectation for your first book, 20-ish, you may get only 4 or 5 of them that come through on everything. And that's okay, because something is better than nothing. So what if this is the first thing you've ever written? What if this is like the only thing you've got out there? This information is more about helping you start a mailing list or just starting a community, to begin with. And so hopefully after you've done this for a little bit, you can identify people who are, really interested in what you have to say, even if it's just you putting fun stuff out on social media. If they're always talking to you or laughing at your comment or your memes or whatever, you'd be like, you know what, you may be really interested in, helping with my launch. I would love that. But anyway, so you're going to appeal to easy adopters. And there's a bunch of marketing schlock. After you get your first one, then you can get two, and the two becomes four, and four becomes eight, and blah, blah, blah. And actual attrition rates and stuff like that aren't factored into it. But we like to see, that pyramid, one person tells two, two tell four, whatever. But anyway, you definitely do want to go after your early adopters first, because those often are the ones who are willing to say word of mouth, like, hey, my friend, my sister, my cousin, this dude that pulled down the principal's pants in high school, he's writing a book. I think they're funny. I think they're above board, or I think, maybe you're not the one that pulled the pants down on the principal's office, but like, this person is so smart. I've heard them talk before, and they're writing this book about the subject. They know a whole lot, and you like that subject too. I think you should follow them, right? Like, these are the people who use word of mouth to spread information that this is a thing that's happening, and to get other people who are just your 100% like best kind of audience to engage with you, even if the book's not written yet. And so that's, again, friends who read. If you have a halfway decent family, and we are not all blessed with people who have we are not all blessed with people in our family who want things to go well for us. So family is always something that I say, take with a grain of salt and use your own best judgment, because again, family can be too helpful in their own way, and sometimes family can absolutely kneecap you. But friends who read, not trying to totally focus on the negative stuff, friends who read, if people who are in the writing community with you, especially if you have, like, again, critique group members, or if you're in a Discord specifically for writers and you've like chatted with another writer who's in a similar, genre as you, and be like, hey, you know what? I would love to help you when your book comes out, and it would mean so much to me if you would help me when my book comes out. Can I add you to my newsletter? Just stuff like that. If you're in a book club, or if you're friends with other, not necessarily friends, but if you do things with people who read, and you have intersection with readers, like, just go ahead and talk to the readers and just be like, I'm writing this book. I'm really excited. It's kind of like this thing we already read. Can I add you to my newsletter? And always ask. Don't presume, and don't buy newsletter like recipients. That's always a bad idea. And then create content to share inside of your newsletter, even if you haven't finished the book, or on your website, or to share with other authors who are looking for content themselves, to share with their existing newsletters, so that they can have something to show them. So this would be like short stories. This would be like if you write a, short chapter to be a prequel to your book, and teasers and loss leads and all that other gobbledygook. If you can write something small to share that people might get hooked into, go ahead and do that. But you may also just go online and shoot the shit, on social media. You might write your own blogs with reviews of other books in the same genre as you. You may engage in those spaces that other authors who write things like you also engage in. So, I might hang out, in a space for somebody that writes science fiction and fantasy funny stuff. And if there are other like comedic writers, I might follow them, on Blue Sky, or I'll follow them on their Insta, or their TikTok, and I'll write my own comments in there, and I'll get into conversations with people who are commenting on their thing, and then I might follow them and they might follow me, and that might turn into something where they become interested in my book. And I already know that they might be, interested simply because they're already engaging with similar stuff. And I mean, it's work. It is work. None of it sounds fun. But you do have to think about, what your goals are. And if your goals include like sharing your book, you got to find people. They won't necessarily find you. And as the internet gets bigger and more, focused on making money instead of there being free discourse, like having a Facebook page for your author, name, and putting stuff on there, it comes out as just screaming into the void, because they want you to pay to boost your post. And so they're not going to show your stuff unless you get the money. And that sucks and it feels like it's not fair and that's their prerogative, but it's not yours. So trying to make that like direct connection, especially if you're super new, your book's not finished, you don't have anything else, like creating a stable of people who are part of your, yeah, I'm losing the word, but like your support, basically, people who like you because y'all have a similar sense of humor or a similar sense of ethics or a similar sense of whatever that also read books. I mean, just talking to them, engaging with them. Hopefully, some of this, especially at the beginning, will be fun. It shouldn't be a chore because they feel like you do. And so if you do that, it will hopefully come out where you can be like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Can I add you to my mailing list? Hey, I'm doing this thing. Can I add you to this other group so we can talk about, stuff? Were you interested? And the ask can be hard, but if you write it down ahead of time before you're actually in front of somebody, it makes it a lot easier. You know, creating something in a void where you can think about the precise words you want to use instead of like having a fumbling interaction because you've been too scared to approach the idea. Yeah, like try to avoid that if you can. Make it before you're actually in front of somebody, and it'll come off a little bit more polished, but it'll also be less stressful because you're just basically copy and pasting a statement that you made 2, 3 weeks ago, and you don't have the same amount of like emotional connection and baggage that goes with that. Okay. One of the things that I also see is a lot of use is very useful, excuse me, is creating social media groups for similar content, but not your own books. So, for example, one of my acquaintances writes dystopia, and he created a group. This was a few years back on Facebook that basically this was before AI stuff too, by the way. But it was basically just like, your favorite art from sci-fi or dystopia books. And it was just like, him getting people who were really into the vibe or, the dystopia and the punk vibe to like share visual media and pretty things. And then he would like slip in on his own stuff, some content about, written stuff and see who responded. And then, he'd be like, hey, this is an excerpt from my book. And I think it's like, this is the art that this reminds me of. And then he was able to kind of just slip things in. And from there, people would be like, oh, tell me about your book. Or the people who are really into it that also like to read, or that responded to other, messages about books that were also dystopia. He'd be like, hey, would you like to do this subgroup with me? And he went that way. These all take a lot of time. And that may be hard for people to handle as well because when we're finished writing the book, we're like, okay, it's ready to go. And saying like, no, you need to either plan to do some of this stuff beforehand, or if you do write the book, then you're going to have to sit on it, and that can be hard to wrap your brain around because you're like, no, I'm ready to share it. But in all actuality, you're not. You need to have people to share it with before you can share something. So these are ways to build your original mailing list, or your followers. And from there, you can say, okay, who out of this group is really engaged with me? Like, who always wants to talk? Who always has some fun stuff to say? Who do I look forward to interacting with? And especially if you're pulling this from other authors, or you're pulling this from people who follow other authors and be like, who seems like they are like just super into volunteering? And I'll admit, I have been part of a number of launch teams because I am a serial volunteer. And the reason people ask me, I'll find out after the fact is like, look, you're like always ready to find solutions when someone whips out with a problem. And so even before I was an editor, I was like in the middle of this kind of thing, just simply because I'm like, oh, hey, no, let's go find a way for you to do this if this avenue closed up. So going back, even if you don't have a newsletter or you have content, you may have other ways of getting followers to join your street team. If you're the kind of author who used a Kickstarter to get backers or to pay for your editing or to pay for your art, people who backed you have already invested in your success. And it's fun to me, not fun, but it's funny to me when people are like, no, I couldn't possibly bother them again. And it's like, babes, they gave you money. Asking them to share a couple of posts 1 week out of the year for this book that they gave money to, like that's nothing. Um, so there's that. And again, like if you know other authors, if you get comfortable talking to other authors, big list, mid list, low list, whatever, you can ask them if you can make appeals inside of their author groups or their existing street teams. Again, trades are very common, especially with things like fantasy. Excuse me, I said that wrong. Especially with things like romance. If you can find an author who writes the same kind of thing as you, you're not exactly in competition. It's kind of like why you always see a bunch of chicken places together. Just having these things hub together helps increase demand. So, the other author who writes the same thing, like them getting their book bought by someone doesn't mean that your book will not be bought. It's not an either or. This is saying, like, boom, we have so much content for you. Revel in it. So other authors, especially if they're close to the same place in like the kind of stuff that they write in, as far as like the niches go, or if they're in a similar area in their career, they may be like stoked to share. Just remember, they may come ask for help too. So don't ask what you wouldn't give. So again, social media callouts are also a thing that you can do. I've known people who, will use their own followers inside of a group or their own followers on a page to do mirror audiences when they do the social media callouts. I am always hesitant to suggest this as your first line because you never know who's coming back. And you're going to have to vet these people, or you should vet these people, especially if you've never really interacted with them and you don't know them, to make sure that they aren't, one of the jerky people who just wants to steal your book. It's rare that that happens, but our books end up on websites they shouldn't, because people just like being jerks. And that happens. So this is not my favorite way. And then again, we talked about how to build that newsletter. Once you have a following, you can go into MailerLite, you can go into MailChimp or whatever you're using, and see who's pretty consistently opening the newsletter and reading it. And you can go and find the followers who are like engaged, who actually are interested in what you have to say. And you can say like, hey, I always love it when I see that you've opened it, or that you respond to polls, or you write me back. Like I really like the way that you like me. Don't say it that way, but like I really like the way that I know I can always see something. If I put something out there, I know you're going to respond, and I love that. And I love how much you enjoy seeing my stuff out. Would you help me with my street team? Again, the creative community is great, especially if you're very new. Again, if you've got people in your critique group. I can't tell you how many reviews that I wrote before I became a professional in the writing community, simply because I knew that person and they were willing and they were willing to like invite me in. It feels special. Again, family and friends, they aren't my favorite because if they don't read what you write, or they're not as good a person as you might think they are, they have a lot more room to make things hard on you. But if you know they're good people, or if your friends are friends with you because y'all like to read the same stuff and talk about it, they may be great for your street team. Lastly, there are places that you can pay money to find reviewers, or pay money to help you with the process of like putting together your launch. There's specific advanced reader copy apps like Booksprout, Puppy, and Voracious Readers Only. Voracious Readers Only is the one that I've heard most people have the largest amount of success, but bear in mind, this is all stuff for fiction, and genre fiction tends to do the best across the board in these spaces. So if you're writing nonfiction, this may not be the best. These may not be the only places or best places for you. And there's also specific places or specific apps like books. No, what is it? Sorry, I cannot see my entire screen. But there are book promotion apps like Story Origin, where you pay, but they basically act as a hub for your entire launch process, including sharing you know specialized versions of your advanced reader copy that cannot be pirated. And this is better than, say, sending out like a zip file or a PDF. And that's another thing that, like, just as an aside, you want to make sure you make it easy to read. You know, if somebody is supposed to be giving you a review in exchange for the book, you want to make sure it's easy to read. You don't want to give somebody a PDF that can't be functionally like looked at on the phone. So having these other versions that, you know, either have an app that are, you know, like Kindle where you can read it easily and change the sizes of things, like that's a benefit. These all cost money though. So the bottom ones, you know, they are great, especially if you are getting big. Um, and then if you really do have a hard time with talking to people, these ARC review apps over here like Booksprout and Pubby, again, especially voracious readers only, you just pay money and your book gets put inside of the, you know, their hub in the genre that you select and people decide whether they want to read it. But you are giving money every month to these things. So your mileage may vary, but you do have to do a lot less groundwork to get these people on board because the reader side of it gets to read books for free. So they're there for that. All right, so once you've created your street team, it's really important to communicate. And for those of us who are introverts or easily find that they feel rejected, we have a hard time with this, especially because, you know, we do have that sense of like, maybe I'm not real. I'm not a good you know, maybe I'm not a good author. I don't know. I asked for help and nobody said anything and my launch was awful. Like you don't want to be in that situation. But, you know, a lot of times when that happens, it's because either the person has not communicated well. They just asked one time in an email that might have gotten missed. And they didn't really plan out things and they didn't really drum up, you know, excitement inside of the people that they were like, oh, this is my street team. And they didn't lay out actual expectations. So if you ask somebody to be on your street team, you gotta say like, hey, can you join my private Discord server and like from March 15th to March 30th, like do a bunch of, you know, posting about me or liking posts that other people have listed about me and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, come every day and check this stuff out so you can remember what I would like you to do. And like in the end, profit. No. And then there'll be value. And we're going to talk in a couple of slides about what that would actually look like. But the point is, right now, you do need a way to communicate with everybody. And you want that way to be both unobtrusive, but also like consistently seen. So Facebook groups used to be a really good way to do this. But again, because of that paywall stuff, or not paywall, but because Facebook is looking in every way to nickel and dime interactions, it's less functional now than it was like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So I've seen a number of people really push away from Facebook. The Facebook groups, like even if you put something in, you know, into Facebook, the likelihood that person or that, you know, that street team, everybody on there is going to see that you put a post in is really low because Facebook doesn't care unless you're paying them. So a lot of people have moved again to private Discord servers and WhatsApp groups. Or, you know, they go old school and they say, all right, I have a specialized newsletter group and I am just simply going to email everybody. And that's good and bad because it means that you're not as centralized because, you know, responding to that email can get kind of confusing. But if you're just like, hey, it's Thursday and I would really like you to put XYZ up, let me know if you did. Woohoo! But anyway, other group messaging apps are also pretty common. And some people that are tech savvy, and if they have the right, you know, host for the website, they can create a back page that allows for like a forum like environment, and they'll just use that. And you have to have like a sign in to get there. Good and bad for a couple of things because you have to have the person being willing to go to that website and sign back in. But there are ways of being like, hey, there's a new message on such and such that will show up in your inbox and let you know, hey, like come back and engage. Regardless, you should have an HQ. And I think I've made this look like it's a lot scarier than it is. But I mean, the point is you want a place where you're all able to either communicate or that you can disseminate information quickly. And, you know, it gets really frustrating if all you've been doing is just emailing people and they're not responding. So, you know, having the space where you can put information or add documents and that kind of thing is beneficial. Uh-oh. Went all the way to the end. How did I do that? Sorry, I'm busting out stuff that you're not ready for. Okay, so let's talk about getting reviews because, like I said, you may have an actual ARC team, or you may fold this all together. So if you want the people to write their own reviews, um, if you send links to your book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any of the other like sales pages, make sure you send the link that is the simplest version that still works. And a lot of times this is going to look like, www.amazon.com slash possibly the book name or slash like 8 numbers. If you end up getting the link that's got like underscores and 7 or 8 different like tail things, that tail stuff has data about where that link came from. And so basically, Amazon can often tell if somebody clicked on your link from you and went to your page because you sent it out. This is positive and negative because, like, yes, you also sometimes can use that information depending on which kind of link it is. But they may recognize, like, oh, this review came from somebody that already knows the author. It's not a legitimate review, and then they'll dismiss the review, or the review will not show up because it doesn't appear to be a valid review. And that sucks, right? Especially if that hits like 90% of the people who want to give you help. So remember, use the most simple version of your link so that Amazon won't do that. Sometimes people still use the free copy and exchange or gift copy, gift whatever, for review, especially like on Target and on other places where reviews are common. This is a requirement. On Amazon, if you use this verbiage or if your people are using verbiage, it looks like it was a transactional thing. The review is not valid. So you want to avoid people using that verbiage when they give you reviews because, again, Amazon will chuck it. All right, so those are the reviews from the people who are on your team. But in my opinion, your street team should really be prompting other people to write the reviews. If you can get somebody else to write the review, if I'm a street team, if I'm on the street team and I come across somebody talking about the book and I'd be like, babes, did you write a review yet? Go write a review. Like that means a lot more than the author having said the same thing. There's that sense that we are on the same level and it gives, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, crap. I mean, I've done all this other stuff, but I didn't do that. So part of being on the launch team would be me being like, if you loved it, go tell people on Amazon, on Goodreads, what have you, like go get it known. And then, the people who are on your street team may actually do keyword searches on social media and respond to people they don't know and talk about the book so that there's more engagement with those posts, even if they're not from you as the author. Um, and it increases visibility just in general. So that's another way that they can get reviews on your behalf without being like, hey, would you give my book a review? Because that tends to just not really hit people in the same emotional stances like, hey, we're geeking out. Yeah, I should go write a review. So there's some other things that your street team should also be doing or should be helping with. They should be sharing professional reviews in their own preferred spaces. If I'm not on Facebook, I'm not going to post on Facebook. But if somebody has reviewed a book I like, I might share that review on Blue Sky because I'm there more often. Or I might link it to other people who read the same kind of stuff. If you have promotional videos or there are review videos on YouTube, I might link that. And this is called outbound linking. This is more of an SEO thing, so I don't know why I put it this way. I apologize. But outbound links basically are one way to like show authority or show validity. I guess is a better way to put it. Show validity. Internal links, like if you're already on a social media site and you tag somebody else's post or you repost somebody else's post, it's just internal to that platform. And it has its own, version of validity there. And then one of the other things that you can do, especially if you've talked to other authors, sorry about that. You can do takeovers or you could do engagement sharing where the other author can tell their newsletter group, like, hey, my bestie who writes the best things is they're the best. Go look at their book, go buy their book. I mean it, it's great. Or you can do takeovers for their group. Takeover parties, if they're on Facebook, or if they're on Discord and they have their own groups of readers, then you just go and you chat and you do fun stuff. And it's called a takeover because you're taking over their audience. And most of the time, these things, you're going to have to do giveaways. So we're going to talk a little bit more about things you can give away that are free or that cost money, depending on how much of a budget you have. Because, I mean, one of the fun things about street teams is that they are cost effective. But if you are going to have to give away things, you want to think about that way ahead of time of what you want to give away and how much you expect back from that process, because there's all sorts of ways you can lose money on your launch. And we want to make sure we're thinking about things ahead of time before we're scrambling for a reason for people to be interested in us. And we have nothing, because we've already spent all of our other funds in other places. And it's just like, I can't even give you a mug or a free copy because I've spent my budget already. All right, so path to success. All right. Again, clearly communicate your expectations. You don't have to have people do a crap ton to be a launch team. Again, you might just be like, hey, I would love it for this week if you would just like do 3 things every day to promote my book. These are the kinds of things. That's it. Like I would love that. And then, later on, like once a month for a couple of months, just like remind people the book exists. Would you do that for me? I would love to do that for you when you're ready. So basically just clearly communicate expectations and make sure that those expectations seem legitimate, but also do it in ways that are like, there are reasons for you to be enticed into do it, but it's okay if you don't, because you don't want people who are like, yeah, I'll do it. And then they disappear because that situation was awkward. And again, vet your street team members. If you have never interacted with this person, they're probably not the best candidate. Even if you only have 10 people that you know well and who like you are better than 50 people who don't. So have a Zoom meeting with everybody, like have a chat. Find a reason to make it fun, but just be like, hey, can you make it? Let's talk about what we're gonna do. I want to introduce you to these people. They're my friends, right? Vet your street team members. If they don't show up, they may not be good for your actual street team. Create an Excel file or a Kanban board or however you organize, and figure out what you want people to do and when. And do this ahead of time. Don't scramble when you're already stressed because, you know, Amazon's not doing the thing you want it to do, or Ingram doesn't have your books ready, and blah, blah, blah. Like, get your creative stuff done ahead of that so that you are not overwhelming yourself. Because, man, launch is stressful, especially if you have problems. And the last thing you want to do is like need to have the mental energy to deal with people, especially if you're an introvert, when everything is already kind of on fire over here. So anything that you can automate, anything that you can, put on a calendar and is just ready to communicate, like anything you can do ahead of time so that everything that can be smoothed out is smoothed out, the better. And then yeah, if you are having people create their own social media posts, give them the graphics and stuff that you're using. Give them clear tips of give them clear tips of what you would like them to say or talk about, like the length of the book. If the book is 150,000 words long, you may want them to slip in there like, this was the fastest 150,000 word book I've read because it was so fun. I couldn't put it down. If there are things that are important for people to know about your book, like I didn't expect that sex scene, but I was really happy that I was there. Just stuff like there are things that readers might be turned off of, and it's way better to have your launch team or your street team like slip in that these things exist so that the people who would not like them or who will not, enjoy the book or who give you a bad review because of these things, no, like, no, that one is not for me. Or like, I am interested. Again, like, man, that was a lot of dragon. I love a lot of dragon. Or, man, that was way too much dragon. The person who thinks that's going to be way too much dragon is going to help you, like, be like, not for you, but also for you. Way better than you would be able to if you're just like, again, screaming into the void. And then create multiple touch points. Everybody on your street team is going to be busy. Everybody is going to have an opportunity to miss an email or miss a communique, or they're going to have a bad day at work. And they maybe just won't have the energy on that one, if to look at that one email you sent closely. It's totally cool to like create touch points to urge action. One and done is not going to work for your launch. People just simply don't respond to one and done. And it's hard because we feel like we're asking too much every time that we make a touch point, especially if we've never done this before. but you're going to have to work against that emotionally. And again, think of ways of making this easier on yourself. So if you schedule an email to go out every morning at 8 o'clock, I put these things, into a queue a month ago on my Google, in my Gmail. I don't have to think about that. It is not an emotional burden that I have in this point in time because I already did that. I did it when it was easy. So those touch points are already there. Another thing that you may want to do is incentivize. So if you do have a budget for your launch, don't just think about the advertising, think about incentivizing people to do stuff. I've seen some really fucking amazing, oh, excuse me, I've seen some really amazing incentives that I thought were super clever. And, each incentive may need to be thought about by you, or if you're going to do something that's really clever, it needs to be like specific to the kind of people that would like your book, who want to be on your street team. So something won't work, but like general things would be gift cards. If you have special editions, if you know people who like stickers or they want personalized letters or mugs, those all cost money, but they're good incentives. Free incentives would be like, I will name a character after you. I will let you be a beta reader for the next book. I'm going to put your name in my next book's acknowledgement page, and you can bring that to parties and show people. So there's free stuff and then there's cost stuff. If you are willing to spend a little money on prizes, then the people who can show them that they've done most for you and on this day could get a particular prize or this week. So like scorecards with like a large Amazon gift card. That's pretty common. It's not a big deal. Most of the time, it's just like, hey, like tell me all the things you did. And be like, so and so on Monday, like did 16 things. That's amazing. Here's $20. You could also do inner circle bonding activities. The one that I saw that was like super freaking cute, and I don't know if this would work anywhere else, but like the book series was one of those like romances where the barista falls in love with somebody. And so like everybody went and got a Starbucks latte and told the barista their name was either like the love interest name or the actual protagonist name. And then they took pictures of themselves holding up, the name on the latte in the picture, and they went, "Thanks a latte." And they posted it to social media. It's adorable. I would never do that. That is not for me, but it is super cute. But yeah, like you can create ways to like strengthen bonding if that is your thing. That would be so hard for me. And I think a lot of you out there that might be like super hard too. But just remember that's building community. Another thing that is a little bit easier is street team bingo. And basically, you create your bingo squares with stuff, and then whoever wins bingo, it's fun. It's like, oh, I accidentally double posted, or I spelled the person's name wrong, or like I used a hashtag that was for something unintentionally sexual because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you put bingo squares on that are just kind of funny. Or like I missed an email or whatever. Like you just create your bingo about the process and it's fun. It's funny, and then people can talk to each other on your street team about it. And all the best thing you can do is be gracious. Again, there are a lot of things that can go wrong in a launch, and they may seem hugely important in the moment. But for the health of that book, it may be stuff that's going to come out in the wash anyway. Again, if you're, if you're for whatever reason, Amazon has started selling your book a day early, and you had all these things that you planned for actual launch day, and you're upset because the plan has changed. You don't want to do things that are going to make other people upset because you accidentally take it out on them, right? So it's very important to be gracious, even if you are stressed out. These people who are on your street team, they are volunteers. They're doing this because you have shown them something to love. And if they don't feel like they are receiving respect or that their actions, which are work, are being appreciated, they're not going to tell you necessarily. They may just fade into the ether, and you won't know what went wrong. And we don't want that because it sucks. It sucks for them. It sucks for you. Again, plan for busyness and overwhelm. Write your positive praise ahead of time, or at least give yourself like token paragraphs that you can add to a personalized email. And then, talk to people directly when you can so they feel special. Like, Some of this may be hard, especially if you're an introvert, but if you've ever felt special in a situation, it helps teach you how to make other people feel special too. And it's important because again, they're doing something that is hard for them too, because they either love your book or they love you. All right, common mistakes to make because we are almost out of time. I always end up overloading my. I apologize. I am not good at appreciating your time, but I always go long. So again, common mistakes are not vetting your street team, and you end up with somebody who has nefarious intent on there, or somebody who just wants your book without having to pay for it. This does happen. And when you don't clearly communicate, either because you weren't clear up front with what you wanted the person to do, so they could opt in or opt out, knowing what was supposed to be occurring, or if there's just simply not enough communication throughout the entire thing. And they're like, well, wait, what? The launch was last week, huh? Make yourself a clear plan. Try to do it ahead of time. Me knowing what I know about stuff, if I was going to be launching a book, I would probably want to give myself 6 months. If this is the first time you're doing it and you just finished a book and you're like ready to go and you're getting all these other things done, like you're getting editing done and you're getting your book cover made and blah, blah, blah. I would still give yourself at least 3 months. Again, like you have to have somebody to launch to. And if you haven't soft launched the idea of you, then you're not ready to launch that book. And so, yeah, give yourself time. Don't overload the team. If something feels like it would be just way too much work, you need to really rethink about like whether or not you want to split your team up into more than one group so that one set of people can, focus on one particular set of activities, another focus on another set of activities, so you don't overwhelm them. Because again, if you overwhelm people, they're just not going to do it. And then, demanding positive review content is a very sticky thing. What I think works best is that if somebody says, that, or if you are handing out ARCs, if you're handing out your advanced reader copies, um, tell people like, if you find something that worries you about the value of my book, please come tell me because maybe I can fix it before we launch. Or, please come tell me so that I can make sure I don't do that in my next book. And so they're still giving you really helpful information, but they may not put that, necessarily negative review up because they know that they're being heard already. But you never want to tell somebody to give a review that doesn't reflect their thoughts. If somebody actually doesn't like your book, you don't want to tell them to give a lie, basically. So be very careful. All right, thank you guys. I guess I did not go too far, but we are at 2 o'clock. I'm going to stick around for a couple of minutes in case you have any questions. But while I'm doing that, I did want to go ahead and remind you guys that we are going to be having a lot of visibility at WizCon this weekend. I did not come up with a link, but it's WISCON, and it's the largest feminist science fiction and fantasy convention in the world, and we are very excited to be there. And then on Monday, if you are a local, we are going to be having the Houston Science Fiction and Fantasy Meetup Group. We're not going to meet, and we'll see you, at 6 p.m. at Melange. It'll be great. I don't see questions, but I hope if you do have any questions that you email me, or you can find us at Tomeworks Edits on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky. I'm actually even on LinkedIn over there. If you want to chat more about this, or if you're like, I need an editor because I'm about to launch a book, because we're always down to help. So yeah, that's what I got. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I want to say thank you to everybody for coming. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye.